Hello and welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival 2015. This is a 3-week-long open online event where we're welcoming thought leaders, businesses, entrepreneurs, makers, learners and doers from around the world to explore the question, the economy's changing, what do I need to know, experience and do? I'm pleased today to be part of this product teardown session. My name's Jules Hayward and I'm the education lead here at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'm joined by Seb and Alcestis and the team here in the studio in Cowes in the UK, Isle of Wight. And we've got two members of the team at iFixit joining us from California. iFixit has been working with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation over a number of years. They have a growing community of open source repair where they curate, produce and provide open source repair manuals and equipment to a global community of people who are repairing equipment across the world. And I'm really pleased to welcome Andrew Goldberg, who is a lead engineer and technical writer at iFixit. And he's been part of the iFixit team since 2012. He's conducted product teardowns on everything from iPhones through to home thermostats, sometimes traveling as far afield as Australia and New Zealand. And he's always keen to be one of the first people to tear down new devices. He's also joined by the second half of this globe-trotting team, which is Sam Lionheart, who's part of the image production team and curating of the open source repair manuals at iFixit.com. There's literally thousands of people accessing these repair manuals around the world as they try to engage in the products and components around us all the time. And if you go online at iFixit.com, you can see these manuals that are provided by iFixit and are also open sourced by the community. And you can learn how to repair anything from a Patagonia jacket through to a new iBook. And I think that today we're going to be tearing down the Nexus 5X and the Nexus 5P and looking at the and comparing them from their repairability. So why is repairability important? One of the things that from a big picture perspective, we thought might be interesting to explore is how we extract materials, we transport materials, we manufacture, we produce component parts and many different products all over the world. And we aren't always that great at opening up the bonnet and getting underneath them. But iFixit is really beginning to change that and allow people to engage in the products that are around them and essentially extending product life by doing what sometimes is quite easy fixes on products so that they can stay as valuable products within the economy for a longer period. This is related to the work that we do here at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation around the circular economy, which looks at how we can keep products, components and materials at their highest utility and value for as long a period of time as possible, ultimately eliminating waste through innovation, creativity and new business models. And it's that interplay around product life extension and maintaining the valuable information and embedded energy within products that I think is really interesting around this growing repair community. So I checked out the iFixit website today, and there's a huge amount of teardown information on there. There's a huge amount of information about repairability and these very beautifully designed manuals. So I was going to ask you both, Andrew and Sam, is it all around electrical products, or can you give us an overview of what else iFixit provides repairability information on?
Yeah, absolutely. iFixit's goal is to be the repair manual for everything. So we got our start with Apple products. Our founders, Kyle and Luke, were trying to fix an iBook, and there was no manual for it. And so they wrote the manual themselves, and then they figured this is valuable, we should share this with people. So we got our start with Apple and electronics, but we want to help people fix everything. And so if you take a look at our site, we have all the guides. So we have repair guides for sewing and fixing sweaters. We've got repair guides for riding lawnmowers and cars.
Bicycles and toys. We've got like Furby guides and just anything. We really rely on the community to kind of expand our horizons because we're generally doing a lot of the electronic repair. But anyone can contribute to iFixit, so they can, like, if their dishwasher breaks, they can go online and create a guide and help the next person fix their dishwasher.
And you also provide tools around that as well as the repair manuals. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. We've been in the repair business and the teaching people repair business for 12 years now. So we've learned a thing or two about tools and what kind of tools you need. And we have an entire line of tools specifically designed for repair. So this is more than just tools designed for taking things apart or building things. I can show you right now, actually. This is our ProTech toolkit, which is about 70 tools that we've found are necessary for repairing small electronics. This is built based off of data that we've scraped from the guides that we've written. So all of the guides for all the small devices that we've written include the tools you need to finish the repair, and we put those most commonly used tools into this tool set. And so that's the sort of thing that we do, is we provide the repair manuals and then all the tools and parts that you need to carry out the repair.
That's great. I've certainly got lots of questions for you. And I just encourage the online community to post questions in the Q&A chat area or on the thinkdiff.co page. There is a chat box underneath. So do engage in this conversation with Andrew and Sam as they go through the teardown. We want this to be participatory and it's a discussion, and we want to open up some of the interesting topic areas in this space. So please do get involved in the discussion. So which of the products are you guys going to start tearing down first?
We'll be starting with the Nexus 5X, which is the smaller of the two Nexus handhelds that came out at the same time. It's cheaper, more economical, and we actually found that it's much easier to repair than its bigger brother, the Nexus 6P, which is P for premium. So we'll be doing the 5X first, and then the 6P with some comparison between the two.
Mm-hmm.
You just got a whole presentation, but I think, Jules, you did a pretty good job of showcasing kind of what repair is about. So we'll kind of do the teardowns, and then we'll intersperse the kind of more circular economy-related things throughout our deal.
Great.
All right, so I'm going to just get started. I've got some slides with close-up pictures from our teardown. We've already torn down both of these devices, and you can see our full exposés on iFixit.com. So if you want close-ups of what I'm doing, take a look there, or at the slides for closer images, just because the webcam isn't going to be that great. But I'll go ahead and get started. The Nexus 5P, it's a 5.5 inch screen. It has a fingerprint reader on the back, and unlike its big brother, it is not a unibody, so it has a removable back. Takes a little bit of prying to get it, but I'm going to do that right now. Then we'll get a look at what's inside.
So this is the 5X, and we actually did the teardown on the Back to the Future Day, which was October 21st, which was like the date that Marty McFly flew into the future. We've got kind of like a really heavy nerd culture in iFixit and on iFixit.com as a community. So we kind of did a lot of fun stuff with that during this teardown. So right now Andrew's just prying open with some plastic opening tools. The plastic tools are really nice on plastic cases so that you're not scraping things unnecessarily, and the plastic tends to not make scratches, and you're not going to do as much damage this way.
I mean, one of the first questions that must come up for you guys is around the warranty on products. As soon as you start opening a product up, what's the impact on warranty?
Yeah, quite often you do void warranties. There are a lot of indicators that manufacturers will use to find out if someone has been into their phone. where they'll have the warranty void stickers where you have to take a sticker off in order to access a screw, or they'll have a sticker over a screw head so that if you put a screwdriver in it, then it punctures that. At this point, it will probably say in your user manual whether opening it at all will hurt it. But since this one has a removable back, it's kind of probably going to be a little gentler on your warranty. But generally, like even in warranty, you may have to pay for a repair, or maybe you don't have access to a repair depending on where you live. So sometimes that's kind of your only recourse. And then once it's out of warranty, then it doesn't really matter, and you can kind of just go for it.
Yeah, most of the repairs that we encourage are for out-of-warranty devices. If you've got some way to get manufacturer support for your device, that's great. But when that support ends, that's usually the day that your phone breaks. And if the manufacturer doesn't provide any sort of manual or system for you to economically get it repaired, that's when we come in. And so at that point, if it's broken and it's out of warranty, you've literally got nothing to lose. And we encourage you to open it up and try and fix it.
Yeah. It's also good to kind of just familiarize yourself with what's inside the device. Even if you don't open it yourself, then maybe you can check it out online just to see like how difficult it is and to find out what exactly powers it. It's not just a mysterious black box that makes your phone calls and connects you to the internet. It's actually a hardware device made up of components, and those components are replaceable, or we hope.
So I had the back cover off, and as you saw, that was a little bit difficult, but not terrible. If you guys want to take a look at the slide, I've got a picture of the inside right now, nice and up close.
So this is kind of what we're looking at right now. Andrew's taking out some of the screws in the mid-frame.
So on the rear cover, you've got some antennas. There are some spring contacts that connect to those. Not too much else going on the rear cover, so if that breaks, it's going to be a cheap part to replace. And then on the inside, you can see that big battery is taking up most of the space with the fingerprint reader above that and camera above that. You can't actually access any of those components yet because they are all trapped and covered by that big black midframe. So I've just taken all the screws out of the midframe, and now I should be able to pry it off and get access to these other components that are trapped underneath it.
So yeah, unfortunately the midframe is kind of covering up all the connectors and everything. It's not an ordinary, well, not ordinary anymore, but it used to be that you used to be able to pop the back off of your cell phone and then just take the battery out in order to like restart your phone if it was on the fritz or something, or just replace it with a new one. Like business people used to just carry like a sheath of batteries so that you could like swap batteries in when you're in the airport and you don't have any way to charge it. But this battery is totally locked in. Andrew just took off another piece of kind of the mid-frame. It's covering up the bottom. It's actually a speaker and antenna combo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a speaker on the inside there. So that came off, and it's also got some antennas wrapped around it, which is pretty common.
Yeah. We know it's an antenna because it's got some traces on it, and that's kind of a common thing we see in various electronic components.
I mean, one of the kind of broader questions, I guess, just linking in with the discussion around the battery is why has that shift happened? I remember opening up my Nokia and doing exactly that with the battery, taking it out, replacing it. Why has that industry shift happened? Because I guess you guys don't focus specifically on particular manufacturers. You're looking at a whole industry, and that whole industry is operating in a specific way because of the nature of that system and how competitive it is. And so I guess what are your thinking in terms of from a systems perspective, what are the trade-offs for repairability that start to come in, and what are the drivers for the industry itself moving away from more repairability that maybe was previously there?
I think that the biggest drive lately, the biggest trend, is thinner and lighter. You can even see the difference between the 5X and the 6P. This is the 5X here, if it were shut. And the 6P, though it's a bigger phone, is thinner. And that's the more premium product. People want thinner, they want lighter, even though it has a bigger screen. And all of that means compromise in design. And so making the battery a little bit less accessible often gives the manufacturer ways to incorporate it in thinner and flatter. And so we don't necessarily assume that it's a maniacal planned obsolescence type deal, although it certainly has that effect, because then once this battery in this phone, for example, has gone through a few hundred charges and no longer holds the same capacity that it used to, it's a major ordeal to replace that battery, and most people are just going to upgrade and buy a new phone. So that's definitely another side effect, whether or not it's the main reason.
Right. So this battery is a lot thinner and a lot more flexible, and it's kind of just like almost the bare like lithium-ion components in there, and if you do puncture that, it is dangerous. If you think about your old cell phones, those were kind of in bigger, thicker, like plastic containers that were very solid, so a user would be able to go in there and pull it out. This is kind of, a manufacturer wouldn't want the average user to go in there and replace this because it is flexible and a little bit more dangerous. So like they want it to be thinner, and in order to make it thinner, they need to take away that kind of safety and accessibility. So it's kind of one of those vicious cycles that like consumer wants things thinner, so the manufacturer has to make things thinner, but then the manufacturer only makes things thinner, so then that's like pushing people to buy those. So it's kind of tough. We've seen a lot of these kinds of built-in batteries. This one's not too horrible, that it's reasonably accessible once you get off a couple components, and the adhesive wasn't too hard. So that's still better than some of the batteries we've seen, certainly.
Yeah, for example, in an HTC One, the battery is on the back of the display with the motherboard on top of that and cables on top of that. And then all that is enclosed in a unibody back that's very difficult to get the rest of the phone out of. So there are better and worse ways to do this, and different manufacturers we see have different methods, and their methods change year to year as they experiment and work. And so we've seen a lot, and we definitely prefer the easily peeled off back and swapped out battery, like on a Samsung Galaxy S3 or S4. And that's just another one of the trends, is that that's kind of going away, like we saw with the Galaxy S6, with it glued on to their back. So that was an attempt to be a more premium quality, premier looking product in a thinner enclosure.
But then you've got twice the breakable surface, which, like, if you're looking at components that are likely to fail or need to be replaced, then you're going to be, first thing is going to be screen, because you're going to drop your phone inevitably. It's, unless you've got like a crazy case on it 24/7. There's that, there's the display, and then there's the battery, which is going to be, it's kind of like the lifespan of the device, that if it's built in, then that's all there is. Like, the more charges it gets, the less capacity it has, and eventually it's going to wear down, like, no matter how good of a job you're doing to take care of your phone.
I go for the crazy case option. I have I always have comments on the ridiculous size of the case on the outside of my phone, so that when I drop it, it doesn't break. But it, you know, that substitutes away from the beautiful design of which the phone you know, was part of the appeal when you buy it. And I have to cover it in this case so that I feel like it's not going to break. One of the questions from a member of the team here was just about, you know, people often get nervous when they're starting to open these products up, maybe initially. How can you find that balance between, you know, investigating and trying to follow a manual step by step, and not actually breaking stuff and making a problem worse?
So yeah, we like, once again, if your phone is broken, then it's kind of like, well, like, it can't get worse. Like, your phone is already, like, you can't use it. If your phone is perfectly functional, then maybe you do want to be a little bit more careful, like, looking into it. But we at iFixit try and make it as easy as possible for even, like, the least technologically minded person to follow. We try and lay it out in, like, super layman's terms, and everything is very, like, you have all of the photos you need and all of the instructions and warnings. And it's also community submittable, so if anyone has trouble with a certain portion or finds a better way to do something, they can add comments, they can edit the guide itself, and then, like, tell people, okay, this is how I did it, and so you've got the entire wealth of knowledge on the internet that's showing you how to take these devices apart. So that helps.
If I can just really quickly, I've got the phone mostly apart now, and so I want to sort of overview what I've done. It's really fast and really easy. Here's the entire motherboard. So just speaking about this motherboard from a repairability perspective, I don't like that it's all one long piece. This comes out here, and then you see down here at the end is your USB charge port. Often in phones, we'll see this USB charge port on its own separate daughter board, which is really nice because this is a part that wears out. Like Sam was saying, you've got screen battery and then USB port.
Yeah.
Because you're plugging in and unplugging it every day. Anything mechanical on your phone, anything you interact with is going to break. So to replace this port on this phone means a micro soldering job or replacing the most expensive component. So we don't like that.
It also actually contains the buttons, right, on this device?
Yeah, yeah. Also, your input buttons are on the side here. They line up with the button covers in the case here.
Yeah.
So the actual switches of volume up and power are on the motherboard as well, which is another no-no.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it was easy to open. It was easy to get the battery out, which is our biggest concern, because that's the ticking time bomb of repairability. Every device with a battery is going to need that battery replaced or the device replaced. And then also we've got several modular components. Here's the headphone jack came out by itself, and that's a very teeny tiny part, so that'll be very inexpensive to replace. And that's another component that breaks as you're jamming your headphones in and out.
That's really jack for sure.
Both of these cameras, and you can see I've got the layout up actually, so that might be a better thing to look at to see all these components.
Yeah, this will be kind of a closer up view.
Yeah, so both of those cameras up near the top there came out, as did the speaker and the fingerprint reader. So we like modularity. We like easily accessible battery. We like not having a ton of things on the display, so that's easy to replace. And we don't like that charge port, I think. There we go. And so that all amounted to a fairly good repairability score of 7. We rate everything that we tear down on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the hardest to repair and 10 being the easiest to repair. And our goal there is to encourage consumers to think about how easy it's going to be to fix something before they buy it instead of after it's broken. And so hopefully people check out our teardowns and see that score and then make a little bit more informed decisions about their next smartphone or computer.
Yeah, the idea behind a teardown is not only to show people kind of the new technologies and what's inside the phone, but oftentimes there are like things that the manufacturer won't necessarily tell you, like, okay, the size of the battery, but we try to make it definitely like consumer information as far as like what you should be buying, what's going to be long-lasting, what is going to be repairable, and what will be the best investment going forward. So we're hoping to be kind of a resource for online.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, is it part of your goal through that consumer side that the industry responds to that in the end, so that if it becomes part of the point of sale decision-making process for consumers, then the industry has a genuine incentive to shift, whereas at the moment they are putting their priorities on the performance, the lightweight, and the points you were making before about, and that then has a knock-on effect on the repairability.
Right. Yeah. So we're definitely kind of trying to, you know, the vote with your dollar kind of experience that, like, okay, if this is repairable and consumers care about its repairability, then that will reflect back to the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
And we do get people, I mean, there's Fairphone. Fairphone's a great example of people who really care about repairability, and they and other companies consult with us about repairability. And
Mm-hmm.
Andrew has, you know, tons of contacts where it's like they'll actually come back to us and say, okay, like, I know that you're going to give this a bad repairability score. What can I do to make it better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we like to get involved with manufacturers at the earliest stage possible, and we've had a few reach out to us and ask for help, which is really great. It shows that there are some people out there who are trying to change, like you said, the priorities for manufacturing and design. We like to see that.
Yeah, and I guess that's going to influence the whole system as a whole. And at the foundation we talk a lot about system level change, and system change isn't easy to achieve. It requires multiple inputs and ultimately influencing the system as a whole, as opposed to just coming in from one angle. So it's I think it's a really interesting case with what iFixit's doing, because it's working at multiple levels there, where you're connecting at the kind of consumer or user level, and then you're also now interacting at the manufacturer level. Are you interacting with recyclers at all as well?
Yeah, definitely. We have a partnership with one of the largest electronics waste recycling companies in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And they've started a new program, entirely new, for parts reclamation, where they will reclaim parts out of damaged but working devices that we'll sell on our store to help people fix more things.
Yeah, so instead of doing the whole, like, throwing every electronic into a shredder and hopefully harvesting the gold or copper or PCB or whatever comes out of that, then we're actually saving those individual components and then putting them back into the market for people who are doing repair and for people who need them. So.
Just before we go into the next phone teardown, we've had a question in from Lisa who was asking about the kind of funding of iFixit and how that works and how an organisation like yours is able to grow and thrive.
Right. So as we said, and as you've said, the repair manuals are online totally for free. Everything is open source and editable, and we don't put any ads on our site for other people, so we're not run by ad revenue. We're like completely self-run. The way we earn our money is by those tools that we've curated and also parts. So we'll sell parts and tools that you need to complete the repair, but even if you don't buy our parts or tools, you're going to have access to the repair manuals. So that's how we keep the lights on.
It's great, and I know that here in the UK we have a very interesting case with University College London, UCL, who've created the Institute of Making, and that is all about these sorts of kinesthetic teardown environments where you can actually engage in products, you can engage with materials that are around us in a much more tangible way, and I think that that allows people like myself who, I wouldn't intuitively go down that route. And so I think it's very interesting the work that iFixit are doing to create open source accessible enablers for people to start engaging with the products around them and extending the product life, but then also I guess it's also about understanding the products that are around us. And how we can influence that kind of ecosystem, as it were.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
So you're getting into the second one there.
Yeah, I just want to get a little bit of a head start on a tricky part. But are there any other questions about the 5X, or can we go ahead and move on to the 6P?
Well, there's more questions coming in, which is great. But I think let's carry on with going into the second one, and I'll chip in with questions as we go through. But do keep the questions coming in online.
All right. So this is the 6P. This is the big premium fancy version. This is actually made by Huawei. That's one of the interesting things about the Google Nexus line is that each phone is a different manufacturer. Google doesn't manufacture any phones themselves. They just spec them out to manufacturers and give them all a chance to get a Nexus phone out there. So this is one of, if not the first, Huawei device available in the US, and we feel like they were trying to make a pretty good impression. And so it's definitely a very nice premium feeling, very solid. It has a metal unibody and very tight seams. It feels like an iPhone level of quality, and we were impressed by that. But the downside of that really nice tight chip is that it's really hard to open up, and there are a lot of tight seams, and prying and getting into places where you need to is very difficult. So on the back of the phone, because it is all one metal piece, there are two panels. Let's see if we have a picture, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
And so on the bottom, there's a small flexible plastic panel, and I'll go ahead and pry that up. And that's hiding a few screws.
So oftentimes with these unibody kind of phones, unibody just means there's basically like a bathtub that all the components fit down into.
There we go.
Then you have to have brakes for the antennas, and sometimes, like with these ones, you'll also have additional screws in there to hold the components down inside. So it's not just sandwiched loosely between the display and the bottom. So the first thing we saw, like, oh no, like how are we going to get into this phone? We saw these panels, and we're like, okay, there's probably going to be screws under there. It might not just be a gap for an antenna.
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom plastic one was really easy to take out, and there's just like 4 screws down there, and one of them does have that tamper-evident sticker over the screw. So that'll be a warranty void, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think I can show it up to the webcam and have you guys be able to see it. We don't have a picture, but there is a picture of it in our teardown if you want to check that out.
Yeah, the full teardown is online, and we'll have kind of more detail and more analysis than we're able to give right now. And yeah, you'll be able to see the tamper evident screw on there.
So then, after we got these 4 screws out the bottom, I realized, well, if there's screws in the bottom, there are probably screws in the top, which is super unfortunate because the top, rather than having a nice thin plastic flexible cover, has a glass cover. So there's this little bump for the camera, as most phones have now, because that's sort of the thickest component at the top here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's covered by a nice, you can see the shine on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a nice, shiny, smooth, rounded piece of glass. So knowing that there are screws under there and that it's a very tight fit, I actually heated this glass because often glass is held down with adhesive and you can soften adhesive with heat, and show off another one of our custom design tools. This is the eye opener, which is a liquid-filled bag that you microwave. It gets hot, not too hot that will damage components, and then you lay it on top of adhesive, and the heat will gently melt it without damaging your device. We actually developed this for opening iPads, which is just a bear, and that'll soften the adhesive and then allow you to pry up the component underneath. I've already opened this phone, so I don't need to set it on there, but usually it takes a couple minutes to soften the adhesive.
Yeah. The impetus kind of for the eye opener is that it used to be the standard to open things with a heat gun, which gets very, very hot. It's like a super-powered hairdryer, and that can often melt and damage your LCD or whatever. So this is kind of a safer way to do that for both your fingers and also the device. So after a lot of heating and very careful prying, because we didn't want to have glass shards everywhere, Andrew was able to get that up.
You can see our picture. We had to actually use an X-Acto knife, a razor blade in there, which is something that we usually try to avoid. Whenever possible, we'll use plastic tools because that's the least likely to cut yourself or scratch and damage the phone or device. And really, it's only metal tools as a last resort. But the gap was just so thin that we had to use. That's actually the tool that we use for opening up Apple Watches. Yeah,
we actually consulted with a master watchmaker. And he told us that you can use a curved razor blade to kind of like slide under the glass without cutting it, and it's a very small insertion point. So we used that for the Apple Watch, and we were able to use that procedure here. So this is an ordinary procedure for opening an iPhone. Have an eye slack. It's basically 2 suction cups that will pull the device apart. So with an iPhone, the display is held in with 2 screws. You take out those 2 screws, and then you put it, suction cup the top and the bottom, and then by squeezing it closed, you just lift it up just enough that you're going to open it without ripping any cables or doing anything bad. But unfortunately for this guy, you had to go through the whole, like, taking out the back and disassembling all that before you're able to do that. But once we have that, then it's fairly easy to get it out of the case.
Yeah, and so like I described before, the entire phone is now out of the case. You could, if it were still working, turn this on and use this as a phone. You would lose a couple of the antennas that remain in the rear case here, but really this is just a piece of metal that protects your phone. This is the entire phone all in one assembly. The screen in the front and the battery in the back.
That suction device looks quite James Bond. It's quite cool. I quite enjoyed seeing that. It looked quite satisfying as a movement to pull that apart.
It's
pretty nice, yeah.
A question that's come in from Sylvia that says, you're a super team. And she was saying as a comment, and then she says, are you still importing your tools, or are you making them in the US?
Most of our tools are imported, yeah. We actually have, so the Ice Black isn't developed by iFixit, so we have partnerships with some makers. For the most part, we do just a lot of curating. We do have a tool design team in-house. So our Brett downstairs developed the eye opener and the eye opener version 2. And we're perfecting kind of the other small like prying tools and things that go along with that. But unfortunately, we don't do any manufacturing here.
And just on your team, what sort of skill sets do the team have? I mean, what's the general kind of backgrounds that the team tend to come from? We lost them.
Itself is a very large economy.
Yeah,
it creates
huge
tons of
job
jobs.
source. Yeah.
and repair creates local jobs, which is great.
Sorry, you cut out for me there for a minute. I missed part of that. Could you just repeat? It looks like we've just lost the connection with Andrew and Sam, but we're just going to try and re-establish that. So just bear with us a couple of minutes. We should be back online soon. In the meantime, do keep your questions coming in. It's great to see some participation from the online community. We have Seb and Alcestis working to re-establish the connection with Sam and Andrew, so do keep with us. Whilst we're waiting to re-establish that connection, to mention what's coming up next, we have an introduction to biomimicry concepts and practice at 6 o'clock GMT. Oh, have we got reconnection coming in? Hi. Hi, Andrew. Sam, are you there? Yeah, we've also got the Vancouver session this evening, an open mic session, social innovation in the city building at 6:30 GMT. Tomorrow we have a session, Denmark ahead of the game, that looks at Denmark as a whole from a circular economy perspective and how they've been innovating in a number of different sectors. We've got Biomimicry, a new film featuring Janine Benyus, which is scheduled to come online tomorrow at 12 o'clock GMT, and the Disruptive Innovation Festival's weekly roundup, which is at 12:30 tomorrow GMT. So don't miss that. It will give some highlights as what's come up this week and what you might like to watch on Catch Up. We have all of the headline sessions and most of the sessions that we've had so far over the last few days for you to view on Catch Up. So don't miss out on viewing those in your own time over the weekend. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
we had an internet malfunction, apparently.
Okay. Well, you're back online. That's great.
Okay, where did we leave off?
Yeah. Well, I was just asking about the kind of skill sets that you have at iFixit. What are the kind of backgrounds that your team tend to come from?
Well, I actually studied printing at university. I did graphic communication, which is basically printing and some graphic design and typography and that kind of thing. But that kind of gave me an advantage at iFixit for photo editing and the kind of that kind of portion of it. So I picked up all of the technology basically when I was here. I worked a lot on cars and woodworking and projects with my father when I was young, so I kind of had the idea of how to go about things, but I'd never taken apart a cell phone, so that was all totally new for me. Andrew's kind of trying to fix the presentation as we're going here, but he was actually a general engineer at Cal Poly, so he basically did everything. He did robotics and mechatronics and all kinds of different engineering things, and he'd always been a tinkerer kind of throughout his life and build PCs and all those kinds of things.
Great.
But I guess what he picked up on the job was more the like small electronics and individual components, and especially the microchip identification and that kind of thing, which is a big component of doing the teardowns. We try and do a lot of analysis in that vein. And then it's kind of just like as you go on, you see more devices and you can compare more devices. And that's kind of a skill set that everyone just gets at this company, like being down, dealing with those every day.
How many people in the iFixit team?
We're kind of like a very segmented company. There's about 70 of us total, but about half of us work in operations, which is sourcing parts and shipping parts and tools and that kind of thing, as well as customer service. And then we also have a huge development team that works on our website and on the software Dizuki. That is actually how we make our guides. And we sell that to manufacturers to do documentation and all kinds of different things for them. And then on the technical writing side, we have a large department that works with students to curate guides that students make for their technical writing courses. And then there's Andrew and I and a couple other people who are doing the guides and the teardowns every day. So there's maybe like 10 people on our team.
Yeah, because I think the concept of a teardown is really interesting from an educational perspective, because it's kinesthetic. It allows people to really interact with products and components. And it's something that we use as a workshop format here at the Foundation, because it allows the kind of micro-level view at an individual product and the components within it, but then you can also look at the big picture of the whole sector that product sits within, and look at the changes over the course of history. And so it allows that interchange between micro and macro level views, which I think is really interesting when kind of developing thinking around this space. Is there anything else that you do with other educational institutions and universities?
So we have a pretty close partnership with Cal Poly, which is a university in our town. We deal with a couple of their clubs there to do like repair cafes, and we'll go to do teardowns in classes sometimes. Our education department actually runs, they've got 50 universities now, and around there for professors who will actually teach their technical writing class. Which is going to be like engineering documentation and just clear communication and that kind of thing. They will use iFixit to make a full set of guides and communicate clearly, and they will make a device page and talk about that device and go through the troubleshooting. So that's going to use all of their skills that they may need in the future, and then we will provide devices and toolkits in order to make those guides.
Andrew, you look like you're having lots of fun there. Talk us through it.
Absolutely. So actually the most exciting part right here, part that came off a few seconds ago, this is, like I mentioned before, the webcam, when I was talking about on the 5X, this is a daughter board that holds the USB-C port, a couple of spring contacts for the speaker, which is this component here, and some antenna components. And so this is a small, easily replaced, well, cheaply replaced component, which is good for an easily broken part of the phone. So that's great. That came out. That was modular. I also just took out the headphone jack, which is on a little cable, and that's modular as well. And the Touch ID sensor, or sorry, the Nexus imprint fingerprint reader sensor, because everyone has their own names for these things. So that's the fingerprint reader right there. That came off as well. So the interesting thing about this phone is that once you get inside, there are a lot of modular components, and it's broken up into pretty easy to disassemble chunks, which is great. But because we're rating for repairability by the common user, we're going to weight very strongly against the difficult opening procedure and the unibody design. You'll see that in the end when we get to our repairability score. But I'm going to just keep chugging along. Like here comes the speakers out now. There's a little bit of adhesive holding the cable down, but that came out pretty easily. And we're about to get the motherboard out, which is a pretty big component on here.
Just as you're doing that, there's a question here from Mark who says, what do you guys think about the modular phone concept? wouldn't all the interconnections mean that they always be more bulky than other phones? You mentioned Fairphone and so on, so it would be interesting to get your view on that.
Yeah, I think that by making a connector like this, tiny little flat, easily broken ribbon cable, compared to something like two components that can fit up against each other, obviously this is going to be smaller and thinner and lighter every time. But there's a certain limit, you know. These phones are going to keep getting smaller, and modular phones will catch up as well. And at a certain point, you're going to have, you know, the Zoolander phone that you can barely hold. And so I think that modular devices are coming. There are a lot of designs in the works where we know about the Fairphone, the Lost Project Aria. That's probably not going to happen. The Puzzle phone. Like you said, they probably won't be as thin and light as the big flagship phones. But how thin and light do you need, and at what cost? And we argue that it's worth it to have a modular, easily repairable device that will last 10 years instead of a thin, sexy brick that will break and last 2 years.
Yeah, and there's certainly a limit. I mean, even with the 6P you saw, there's a huge raised portion that's for the camera. I mean, so like there are certain components that are never going to be small enough. Like a headphone jack is obviously going to be, you know, big enough to fit a headphone into, so like you can't make it any smaller than that. And buttons have to be like able to be touched by your fingers. So, you know, there are certain limitations that it's not just going to be like a thin, invisible piece of paper. So hopefully that won't be too big a limitation for the modular phones.
All right, so I've got about how far I'm going to. Motherboard is here, and that came off. And there's some nice big thermal compound. That's what that looks like, a wad of bubblegum there. And that's just because the main processor, the SoC, is right under there, and that's a hot component. This is the front face, so the rear-facing camera, so that's your main camera, that came off. So as you can see from all the pieces I have laid out in front of me, this is a very modular device once you get inside. And so everything, when we're talking about the repairability of the Nexus 6P, is once you get inside, and that big hurdle to repairability is getting inside. And so I think that we rated this a 2 out of 10. And while we do like a lot of the design aspects on the inside, there's just that big barrier to repair of getting to the battery, getting to the screen, getting to anything inside. Requires you to heat up and carefully pry against a piece of glass with, holding against my shirt there, with such a small, tight tolerance that you need a razor blade. And that's not the kind of thing that your average home do-it-yourself repair person wants to do or is interested in doing. And so that's why we rated low on the repairability score.
Great. We've just got about five more minutes here, so I just wanted to bring in kind of a broader question that's come up here around the kind of solution space with this. People are asking questions about manufacturers, how they've responded to this. We've talked about the recyclers as well, and there's this growing repair community. So what's the thinking from iFixit in terms of the future vision for this space, and in terms of the kind of the things that need to be put in place in order to get there?
Well, we think that there's a lot of economic value to repair, and we think that that is going to be a strong motivator for a lot of the big players, like we're seeing with our recycling relationships and with our do-it-yourself home community, and hopefully with our manufacturing partnerships. So for us, we think that repair is going to become less of an option and more of an economic necessity in the future. And we're just trying to help people be there and be ready for that and be able to do that at home and want to do that. A big part of what we do is encouraging people that repair is easy to do, it's fun to do, it's rewarding, and it's economical and good for the environment. But it's definitely a campaign thing that we're working with.
Yeah, I would say Europe's probably a lot far ahead as far as the value of repair and seeing kind of the necessity of being able to either repair or recycle. So there's been a big movement recently to have recycling documentation so that recyclers can like take out these huge flammable batteries before shredding, or to have documentation so that you can repair things. So I think that's the way things are going. We're not going to have these resources forever, and I think we're really starting to realize that. So beyond, having a thin, slim device that you can still somehow get into, like, the repairability portion is very necessary.
I think that's a great answer, and I think that one of the things that we kind of talk about when we're looking at products, components, and materials is how can we change the way we think about these things that surround us all the time in our daily lives, and whether that's working with the manufacturers, whether that's looking right down through the supply chain, the consumers or the users, and through to the recyclers. So looking at that whole system and shifting the whole industry so that they move in a direction that has the potential to thrive in the long term. And so I think that's a really great vision that iFixit has set out. And I think the idea around creating this idea of fun, of repairability, is really key, and that comes across from this session for sure. It comes across from the website as well, and I definitely encourage the people who've joined us here today to go, if you haven't already been into iFixit.com, then do get online and look at the repair manuals, because they really are beautifully laid out and very simple to follow, even for people like me who wouldn't intuitively go down the route of opening up products. I also wanted to reiterate that we have a session with Kyle, who is the co-founder of iFixit, on open source movement and why you should join it, and that's here at thinkdiff.co on the 13th of November, starting at 4 o'clock GMT. I've mentioned just Sam and Andrew, whilst you were just dropping off there, some of the other sessions that we've got on Diff coming up over the next 24 hours. So do make sure you join. There's some great sessions following on this evening from Vancouver, the social innovation in city buildings. And we also have Alison Vincent speaking about the Internet of Everything and connecting the unconnected as our next headline act on the 10th of November at 3 o'clock GMT. There's a huge shift from a European perspective, and the European Commission have been putting a lot of focus on the circular economy, and we'll be discussing the circular economy from a policy perspective with Ida Auken and Joanna Katainen on the 11th of November at 3 o'clock GMT. So do look out for those headline sessions coming up. Just over to you guys if you wanted to any closing words from you.
Just thanks very much for having us, and we're really excited to kind of be a part of this whole movement, and we're really impressed to be able to be here.
Yeah, and we hope that you will come and check out the full teardowns on iFixit.com. If you go to iFixit.com/teardown, there'll be links to both the 5X and the 6P teardowns, and you can see a lot more detail and analysis than we were able to provide here. So we'd love for you to take a look at that. And
also contribute. If you've got any repair guides you'd like to see if we have online, and then maybe make them yourselves, that's always an option.
It's great. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really nice running this session with you, and I've learned a lot from it. I know we've got a whole range of different people, from engineers, designers, educators, policymakers, joining us for the Disruptive Innovation Festival, and I think the work that you do at iFixit touches on all of those different sectors. And so do be part of the conversation for Kyle's session when that comes up on the 13th. And just like to thank everyone for joining us, and a big thank you to Sam and Andrew from California.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.